This is Alexander Hammerstone, your boy Hammer, and you are listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com.
This is Alex Chamberlain, and you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Welcome to Shark Week. Championship Week, right here at WrestlingEpicenter.com. It is Shark Week as well, over on Discovery Channel. But this week over here at Wrestling Epicenter, it's Championship Week. And I say that because our guest earlier this week was ROH World Heavyweight Champion Matt Taven. And now we're bringing you MLW Openweight Champion Alexander Hammerstone. So it's Championship Week. Current champions here at the Wrestling Epicenter this week. Wanted to say a couple quick things about Hammerstone. I first saw him in Paragon Pro Wrestling. That's the show that used to be on Pop TV at like 2 a.m. on Sunday morning, or Saturday morning it might have even been. I remember watching Paragon at work when I used to work Saturday mornings. I used to bring it in and watch it while sitting there because there was nothing else to do. Great show, and Hammerstone stood out. He was tag teamed with Alexander Chamberlain, who was also on our show, and they had great matches, almost Demolition versus the Rockers kind of matches with the Whirlwind Gentlemen. And great matches, and there was a lot of talent in Paragon. And he shined above the others because he just looked like $1,000,000. He was chiseled out of stone. It was hard to deny where he was going to be going. And when you saw him later on, after a few years more experience at Ring Warriors, you could see that he had learned a lot more and could do a lot more in terms of understanding all the psychology and everything that goes along with it. All of this was leading to where we are now. Maybe he cut the hair. We talk a little bit about that. But where Alexander Hammerstone is right now is an incredible place. MLW is a great product. They've got a new relationship with Pro Wrestling Noah. They are going to be having their first pay-per-view Superfight happening in November. Lots of great things happening for Major League Wrestling. Do not sleep on these guys. Great promotion. Great old-school style wrestling with a new flavor to it, too. Really a big fan of Major League Wrestling and of Alexander Hammerstone, who also, by the way, happens to be an Arizona guy. And as an Arizona guy, adopted son since 2000, I'm very happy to see a local boy do well. Anyway, if you are listening on YouTube, click that subscribe button. If you're listening on Facebook, hit like. Comment on this video. Let us know. Comment on YouTube as well. I'll find a way to fit some of it on Twitter somehow. Twitter's our hardest thing to get people to go to because we don't do as much with it. But if you're listening to this at W Epicenter, go over there, click the follow button, make us feel a little bit better about our numbers. We're like over 11,000 on Facebook. We're doing really good numbers on YouTube, but Twitter, we're just plodding along. So help us out. And without any further delay, here is Alexander Hammerstone on the Wrestling Epicenter.
How's it going, everybody? This is Brian Pillman II, and you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. On the Newsmaker line with me right now is the MLW Openweight Champion, the National Openweight Champion, and in fact the inaugural one of that. In that, he is Alexander Hammerstone. Mr. Hammerstone, are you with me?
I'm with you. Thanks for having me.
It's a good pleasure to have you on, man, and it's a good thing to have another Arizona boy on the show too.
Got to represent.
All right, so I mentioned it in the intro that you're the National Openweight Champion of MLW. How are you enjoying your time thus far in Major League Wrestling?
It's great. I have literally zero complaints. Um, I mean, it was a hard decision at the time just because I had some different avenues I could potentially be going down. So you're trying to sit there and weigh your options, weigh your choices, and kind of worry about what's going to pay off and be the best direction for you. But ever since signing, just 6 months ago, 7 months ago, we've seen growth as in like we announced our international TV in the UK, then Ireland, then we got TV in Africa, then we announced our first pay-per-view, then we just announced this deal with Noah, and then they announced I'm going to be the first MLW superstar going over there. So the growth has just been extremely rampant, and I've been kind of fortunate to work my way into the cluster of the guys that's going to be at the forefront of it. So it's been incredible, and I literally couldn't be happier.
Absolutely. MLW, I mean, I remember buying the VHS tape of the first show they did in 2002, and here we are, and it's such a huge company compared to where it was back then. Definitely upswing.
Pretty incredible to see the moves we're making almost on a monthly or weekly even basis.
All right. So for the uninitiated, how would you describe the National Openweight Championship? How would you describe what the belt means?
Well, basically, it's something to be represented at a high level. Obviously, it's going to be a centerpiece of the show. It's going to be at the forefront of our programming. And just to kick it off, they picked 4 of the pretty much guys who had been working their way towards the top of the scene of the company who hadn't yet maybe reached that upper echelon, and they put them in a mini tournament, and I was the first one to come out. And being that it's a national openweight title, the idea presented is that MLW, unlike a lot of wrestling companies, it's very common these days to see a wrestling company have a 175-pound heavyweight champion. MLW has been doing its best to enforce those weight regulations. So you see a heavyweight title match, it's going to be some heavyweights. You see a middleweight title match, it's going to be a middleweight. So what this title opens up is the door for a lighter athlete to have one of those matches against a big heavyweight, or vice versa. Or really, the possibilities are endless. The idea with this title is it's kind of like an all-comers, perhaps a special attraction type match. Or it could just end up being, 2 heavyweights slugging it out. But the idea is presenting the best possible matchups across the board, across any weight divisions.
All right. Awesome. So I was talking to you on Facebook, and I mentioned the first time I saw you was back in Paragon Pro Wrestling. That's before I even knew you were an Arizona guy. I loved Paragon. I was probably the only fool that was up at 2 a.m. watching it on Pop TV, which later became the home of Impact, which kind of sent Paragon sailing. But what was your memories of working for Paragon Pro Wrestling? And did you, like I did, think it had some more legs than it had?
So the thing with Paragon is it was off to a very rocky start. And once it kind of got into its groove, it was charming in its own way. We had ample talent there. We had a solid group of guys, but there was also a strong divide between the core group of guys who could carry that show to success and then the undercard talent. There was kind of like a strong step down. You had this group of guys that could go out there and potentially carry a show, and then you had this group of guys that were basically not ready for that level of exposure. And they were kind of just happy to be there. And realistically, I think one of the problems is you had the owner who kind of liked that attitude, because the guys who were just happy to be there were going to do anything he wanted. We're going to behave. We're going to play by the rules. Versus sometimes when you get these more established guys, they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They have a little bit of attitude. They want a little bit more say-so in how they're presented, what they do on the show, which is a good thing, but can also be a frustrating thing when that image does, or that vision doesn't line up with what the show wanted to do. And basically, that's where when I walked away from the show, I ended up quitting a couple months before it went off the air, just because that's the lane I got into, where I saw what I wanted to do, and it basically became very unpleasant for me at a certain point. But I do look back on it, and I got some great matches out of it. I learned a lot. Obviously, it was a kind of a prerequisite to be on a national TV product, regardless of if people were watching it or not, and kind of learn that skill of how to present yourself as a television wrestler versus just being another indie guy.
Absolutely. And you were tag team with Alexander Chamberlain. He's actually been on our show before. He was way more experienced than you. I mean, I think he started in like 2001. Did you learn a lot from teaming with him?
Yeah, I learned. I think you basically, anybody you're teamed up with and anyone you spend a lot of time with, you're going to learn from. Little things you pick up. I definitely liked tagging with him. I hated the idea of it first. As far as I could tell, the only thought there was, hey, these guys are both named Alex. Let's put them in a tag team.
I actually was going to ask you that, if that was the reason.
That comes back to what we were talking about earlier with like the direction of the show just being strange. Because when I started that show, I was traveling the country with a tag team partner. My tag team partner was Joe Graves.
Right.
We had championships all over the Southwest, and he was actually part of Paragon for a very brief moment. And so they brought us in as a tag team, then split us up, then made me tag with this other guy, and it's like, why? And it was almost like let's just mess with these guys and see how they respond. That's how it felt. But when you give us chicken salad, or chicken shit, I try my best to make chicken salad. So although I didn't like the idea of being in a team with Alex, I respected him as a wrestler, and I saw what I could learn from him. And I definitely picked some things up from him. And more than anything, that was really the start of me trying to stick out as a personality, because we're on TV. It's both of us in a team, so it's like we're already being grouped together. And he was getting the major singles push. He was the one being pushed to the top, and I was kind of like realistically, my job on that show was to put over guys on their way to wrestle him. That's what I ended up doing for about 6 months straight, and that's why I eventually got sick of it. Part of it. But, I tried to really develop a personality to stand out. And some of the best stuff that I did on that show was promos.
Yep.
The stuff I was able to do promo-wise really, I thought, stood out a lot more than my matches, and that was where I really started to hone that and learn that. So I like that, and I learned some of that from Alex in the regard of you don't want to be just like your tag partner. You want to have two personalities that make sense together, but definitely stay in their own lane. And now that's something that I carry over and try to do with the Dynasty and MLW.
Absolutely. Well, it's kind of funny, though. Every time I watch TV now, I see things like Impact and Ring of Honor and other companies working that same venue, Sam's Town Live. It's kind of cool that was kind of the first one to bring that to people's attention. Yeah,
one of these days, I don't know. So the thing with MLW is I don't think they
haven't been there yet. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think they want to maybe work that same venue that's being used by so many different companies, but that would be like awesome for me because I love the Sam's Town venue. That's always going to be special to me. That's probably the first major venue I performed in back in maybe like 2012 with FSW.
Yeah.
So, that's an awesome venue, and to kind of come full circle and be able to perform with MLW there would be awesome.
So I mentioned on Facebook that I was having you on, and my buddy Daniel Edler. I don't know if that even rings a bell to you, but he said to say hello. So I don't know if that means anything to you. He's an English guy who lives in Vegas, so I don't know what that means. He used to be my co-host, and he used to run IPW UK. Anyway, we're going to get back to MLW, I promise, but you did get to work some more TV tapings in Sam's Town when you worked for Ring Warriors. And another thing, I was getting up early and DVRing it. Maybe I cheated a little and just DVR'd it and watched it later. But Ring Warriors was really cool and had an old school feel to it. Again, it's kind of the same question I asked you. Did you think it had more legs than it showed?
Well, I think the Ring Warriors roster was even better than Paragon. There was so many great guys there.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a complete and utter lack of direction there was kind of a couple cooks in the kitchen and no one really knew, like if two people said things that went against each other, you'd try to figure out okay, well, who's the top guy who's going to tell me exactly what we need to do? And that was so hard. It was like pulling teeth sometimes. And it was just there were some good ideas, but there was a lack of clarity right from the get-go, and like the thing is when you try to jump into a role of, okay, national TV, here's all these guys, you almost need to do a show that's not televised just to kind of do a run through of making sure everything goes smooth and seeing what lane everyone's going to go in. Before you jump, dive into the water before you know how deep it is, basically, for lack of a better term. But there were some really good guys there. And, I look back on my time with Ring Warriors, even more so than Paragon, and I'm proud of everything I did there. I had every single match I had there, I would be willing to send out as a match, to be looked at as one of my best. Eli Drake, I had a great match with him.
Marty the Moth.
I had Marty the Moth. Even some of the lesser known guys like Damian Drake, so it's like every single match I had there, I enjoyed and I was proud of. And I think a lot of the guys put on really good matches, but a wrestling show is never going to survive on really good matches. It was a wrestling show that was 95% wrestling matches with no substance behind it. So you didn't know who was what and why you were supposed to cheer for guys or why you're supposed to boo guys. Right. And it's just like, that's not going to work. Like, people complain about Raw or SmackDown or whatever being too much of talking, too much of like gimmicky stuff, but on the flip side of that, too much wrestling is just as bad because you have no reason to care about any of it. And by the time you've seen, you're an hour in and you've seen every move, it's like, why you're not hoping to see moves, you're hoping to care about something. So that was really the problem with that. I wish it would have had a chance to live a little bit longer than it did, but then again, it kind of folded and dissolved right in time for me to go where I am now. So
it was kind of a seamless transition.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So probably the biggest transition for you physically, because you're still in the same incredible shape, is I got to ask about the hair. You cut the hair, and I got to be honest, the first time I saw you, I was kind of like, is this the same dude? But why did you cut the locks?
Well, I played around with the idea for pretty much like most of 2018. I remember like having conversations with a couple close friends. I had the idea of kind of going back to the drawing board with not just like my look, but the way I presented myself, the way I talked, the way I did things. And, because it's like, at the end of the day, the way I looked had worked for me, and it was going to keep working for me on a certain level. It was guaranteed that I was going to get booked on the indies. It was guaranteed that I was going to make X amount of dollars. It was guaranteed that I was going to do things at the level I was at. But it hadn't yet broke me through to the next level. And a lot of the times, the thing that was holding me back at that next level was basically I got comparisons to specific wrestlers. And honestly, part of that's like, I almost embraced that at a certain point. I worked with PCW Ultra for a couple years, and the fans there heckled me, even when I was wearing white boots and lightning red, tights, they started heckling me, calling me Single H, instead of Triple H. And that was, and eventually, I had my t-shirt guy print up a mock Single H shirt and start selling them. And then eventually I got the all black gear with the silver H on them. And then, it kind of just played into, as like a bit of a joke, but then it got to the point where like certain people thought I was like a Triple H parody wrestler. And I was like, oh gosh, I got to get away from this. And I was, there's obviously ways I could have done that without cutting the hair, but I just like heard that so many times on a whim. I kind of just, the hair went first. I was actually trying to get a job with a different company at the time, and they kind of said, if the hair goes, we'll hire you. And then they didn't hire me. Uh-huh. But that's not really too important. But the hair went first, and then, I still wrestled a couple shows after that. And then he was like, I'm just going through the motions. Like, I'm not really excited about what I'm doing right now. So that's why I said, okay, I really got to go back to the drawing board and like bring out more of my personality and more of like what I want to be doing, what I want to be looked at as, more than, everybody comes into wrestling thinking what's going to get them signed or what's going to get them booked or how they should present themselves. And I kind of threw out that all out the window. Even when people were telling me, oh, don't do it, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't change your music, don't do this, don't wear that to the ring, I said, screw it. I don't care. I'm going to do what I want to do. and I think that's organically going to get over because it's going to resonate as real.
I agree. I completely agree. All right. Some of the big challengers that you have coming up here for the Openweight Championship include Davey Boy Smith Jr., as well as the guy you beat in the tournament finals, Brian Pillman. Of course, they're part of the Hart Dynasty. Thoughts on working with some of the second-generation stars, and some of them even, more than second generation, of some of the best of all time?
Yeah, so, personal opinions aside, because we haven't really gotten along with them ever since I've been in the company, like, there's most everybody in MLW is there for a very good reason. They bring something very good to the table. And even a guy like Brian Pillman Jr., who's not super experienced yet, he's very young in the business. Obviously, that natural ability, kind of covers up where the experience lacks. And then a guy like Davey Boy, he's just on another level. After wrestling him a couple weeks ago, and then after watching the match that he just had with Timothy Thatcher, I'm convinced that he's one of the absolute best wrestlers in the whole country right now. So it's awesome, because the thing is, like, going back to what we were talking about, how I was, guaranteed to kind of keep wrestling at the level I was at, I wanted next level competition, and that's what you need, kind of the steel sharpens steel, and there's no jokers, there's no playtimers at MLW, so I'm enjoying working with these guys just because I want the best. I want to have to bring my best to the ring every time. I want people to see what I do and see who I go up against and watch me hold my own, or even outshine guys that they've respected for years.
Absolutely. Does it bother you that when people are talking about wrestling now, they talk about WWE and they talk about AEW, and it almost seems like all the other companies, like yourself, like Impact, like Ring of Honor, and like yourself being MLW, are kind of almost an afterthought now, and it's like, I don't see any change in the product. If anything, it's gotten better.
There's a little bit of that vibe right now, and it's frustrating at times, because sometimes, like, when we do finally, like, I see so many times, like, I'll be watching the YouTube premiere of the show, and the live comments are coming on, and someone will be like, wow, this is my first time watching the show. This is better than WWE. This is great. Why haven't I been watching this? And it's kind of like, yeah, why isn't anybody watching this? But, like, we're growing, and obviously the goal is to keep growing. But the thing is, like, right now there's so much of an oversaturation in wrestling. There's Ring of Honor on TV. There's Impact. There's New Japan, on TV in the States. There's WWE. Now AEW is a thing. So there's all this wrestling. So to convince someone to give a show a chance when they're already watching 6 hours a week of wrestling, that's the hard part, is getting them in. And then once we got them, we usually keep them. Like,
right.
I've heard from so many people that are, oh man, I don't know why I didn't start watching this sooner. So yeah, it's frustrating, but the thing is, you have a company like AEW, and they have a billionaire behind it, and they throw millions of dollars right up, with pay-per-views and web advertisements and signing up all these hot indie guys who have a lot of buzz. That's going to generate a lot of buzz real quick, and that's going to get a lot of eyes on the product. And there's nothing wrong with that. Versus what I said, like MLW has been doing, where it's like, okay, well, we're growing at the pace that we can grow at. And
right.
Court Bauer is extremely smart. We could have done a pay-per-view 6 months ago, but he's waiting until we can generate the right storylines in the right venue that we're going to be running in Chicago. We've had a three-time sellout there. So it's like, now, like, all the cards are lining up so that when we have our first pay-per-view, people are going to buy it and people are going to watch it. We're not just doing a pay-per-view to do it. This Noah deal is something that's now it's happening at a time where people are excited to see those wrestlers here and excited to see our wrestlers over there. He didn't just do it to do it. So it's like, nothing wrong with going all out, right away. And obviously that's working for the companies doing it. But I think as much as it's frustrating, because everybody, at the company wants to be at the forefront, we want to be the talk of the town, we want to be the center of attention, everybody does. We always want more eyes on our product. I think enough of us have the realistic approach and the realistic mindset of where we're at versus where we want to be and how we have to get there. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of when. It's not a matter of if we all just keep putting in the work. So, Rome wasn't built in a day, and MLW isn't going to take over the wrestling world, in a year. It's going to take time, but, a lot of us are very committed to making that happen.
Very cool, very cool. Another guy, you said Court Bauer, but another guy who's working backstage, at least he was, I think he still is Jim Cornette. Has Jim Cornette given you any advice on your performance?
Jim Cornette has been invaluable to me so far. It sucks that not only wrestling fans, but even wrestlers have this weird, twisted view of the type of person he is. But yeah, he's an incredible mind. And when you've been in the business as long as he has, it's baffling the way he's able to spit off ideas. And, you could give him an inch and then he could show you how to make it a mile, just like that. And so, yeah, he's extremely helpful. He's extremely passionate. He's gone above and beyond everything he's been asked to do every time he's been with the company. And I think a lot of the wrestlers have benefited tremendously from it. And now with the shift of the perspective and the kind of social shift with the internet and media and all these the fans' perception of things, like they think they know something, or they get this tidbit, or one of their favorite wrestlers says something bad about somebody else, and it kind of becomes like this bandwagon thought process. But I'll be one of the guys who's not afraid to say, Jim Cornette has been extremely helpful in my career, and it's extremely helpful to a lot of people's favorites who they might not realize. So as much as people can, shit on him and think this or that, or think he's out of touch with the current product, he's responsible for a lot of things that people are loving on the current product.
Except for maybe our political views, I think we might be related. He and I. It's just like, it's staggering. I listened to his review of shows, and it's like, holy shit, that's exactly what I said. I think it's a compliment to me that I'm thinking like him. So definitely big compliments to Jim Cornette.
Yeah, I definitely make sure I don't talk politics around him, because I want him to keep liking me.
Yeah, he gets pretty animated, and I don't disagree on everything, but I said the wrong word to him, and I got Twitter blocked, and it's like, oh man, I like reading his stuff. So, all right, well, I'll let you go in just a sec. I just wanted to ask, what can we expect from the future from Alexander Hammerstone, especially as it goes with MLW? I guess including your trip overseas. I know you've been to Japan before, but of course this will be different when it's representing MLW with Noah.
Yeah, this will definitely be different. It's definitely a lot longer than I've been in the past, but I got about 2 weeks before I take off. So as far as shows between now and then, it's not much. It's some shows in Vegas, some shows in Arizona. So really what's on my mind and what's coming up next is going to be this N1 tournament in Japan. And obviously the goal in my mind is to win that, is to represent, and be, I believe the first American to win it, but that's what's on my immediate mind. And then when I get back, it's going to be right on the road to MLW Superfight, our first big pay-per-view, which, I'm hoping everybody watches, everybody takes the time. It's only $20, but I guarantee you're going to get some incredible wrestling out of it. So it's like, those are the two things that's on my mind right now. And I just want to keep climbing, because I told Court Bauer when I signed, and I tell him, I make sure to remind him all the time, I want to be the face of the company. I want the company on my back. And if the national Openweight title isn't the centerpiece of the show and the shining belt and the main event, then I want to move on and win the heavyweight title. I'm hungry, and the opportunities are there, so I'm trying to take them every chance I get.
Very cool. Well, probably the look above all else probably made you stand out a little more than others in Paragon, but now everything has fallen into place. You've really got it all going, and man, I'm happy for your success, and I wish you the best of luck.
Hey, thanks for having me, James.
I appreciate you taking the time. Hey, before I let you go, can I ask for one last favor from you?
Let's hear it.
All right, so it's going to be a station ID. Do you mind saying this is Alexander Hammerstone, and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter?
Yeah, for sure. All right. This is Alexander Hammerstone, your boy Hammer, and you are listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
Beautiful, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course, man.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night.